Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties Radio, episode 37 for season 2018, our second last episode for this year. And I'm joined, of course, by Vickers in Canberra.
Hey, how's it going?
And my name's Lee. Like, people need to be reminded of what our names are, but there you go, we're going to do it anyway. This week, we're going to talk about three topics. We're going to talk about Trump and Syria. We're going to talk about Labour and housing policy. And we're going to talk about ride-sharing in New South Wales and tax that has been collected on them. So let's start off with Trump and Syria. Donald Trump overnight has announced a unilateral withdrawal. Well, firstly, he's announced that he beat, that they have claimed victory over Islamic State, and they're going to pull out all troops, a complete withdrawal out of Syria.
So here's the thing. I'm about to break everyone. I've been saying, Trump tends to give Trump credit when it's due. So George Bush did exactly the same thing in Iraq in 2003, in case people don't remember. There's that mission accomplished banner, and he pulled troops out. And back then it was pulled troops until, to operational requirements only. So basically to assist the Iraqi forces in rebuilding their country. And then, of course, the violence ramped up like crazy, and then you had the surge.
Yeah.
And that's where it really, it was all about, really clamping down on the violence that was getting out of hand in Iraq. And then, Obama came in and did a very slow, gradual withdrawal without much fanfare and announcement, but they did do it. So in terms of Trump announcing this, I mean, it's a great announcement, but I sit there and go yeah, it's probably going to be the same thing as what happened when our good friend George Bush did it.
And also, I mean, so there's that kind of slipperiness. Though, I mean, I don't know if Bush ever said they'd have a complete withdrawal. From my understanding, there's Trump said there's going to be a complete withdrawal from Syria. So that is a little bit different. It's also clearer to know whether they're successful or not. There's also, general slipperiness in terms of what is war. So that's something that Obama did a lot, which was start firing missiles, start sending in drones, start sending in special forces. But it's a kinetic military action, not a war. Because even in the paper-thin fiction of the US government, theoretically, the administration doesn't have the unilateral right to declare war. It's declared by Congress. Not that Congress ever hold them accountable, but that's a separate question. So I agree that this is an area where there's always lots of slipperiness. Maybe they withdraw all their troops, but they still send in drones. Maybe they still send in special forces here and there. The US has close military ties with people who are, with the Israelis who have gone in there and blown up stuff. With Trump, you never really know what the case is going to be. You never really know what the plan is how it's actually going to play it until it actually happens. But on the surface, assuming that what he says comes true, this is a good thing. One less war.
So, like I said, I have a skepticism that the deep state will actually allow this to happen. I think what you'll find is there'll be a gradual withdrawal, and then something will happen that requires a surge of troops or something. Some objective isn't met. There'll be a terrorist attack or something that causes them to stay in it. Just because there's too many pies and vested interests in Syria now.
Sure.
So I'm skeptical, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, this is also like the classic case of how Donald Trump does all these policy, which is announce it on Twitter and then wait for the rest of the government to follow up and do the actual work. So, it's when you do things haphazardly. Like, I mean, the nature of government is a large institution, not just even with like sort of people who are deliberately dragging their feet, but just in terms of like, there's actually a lot of detail in all of this stuff, and Donald Trump is not the kind of guy who gives a shit about details. He's announce it and then let somebody else clean up the mess. So, he never backs down. He never says he was wrong. He never, said he screwed up. So whatever happens, he'll say, "Oh, that was the plan the whole time, and it's the best plan. How dare you ever question it? It's the light. Blah blah blah." So.
It's not far from the truth. But I expect all of that. So this is one of those things where the thing is, I think it's much more. I found the Korea thing much more likely than this one, just because there are people within the elements of the deep state that really want Korea to be resolved. Right? It's been going on too long. There's no money to be made there, so it just needs to be resolved. Whereas there's still pies that haven't been divvied up with respect to what's going on in Syria.
Well, I mean, also South Korea can do whatever the hell they want. Ultimately, like, you know, they could, like, if the South Korean president wants to forge ahead and sign a peace treaty with North Korea, well, they could do it. Where, you know, the US basically has gone into Syria. They're not welcome there by anybody who's there, but no one's going to shoot at them because who wants to go to war with the US over Syria? So it's, you know, I'm sure Syria and Turkey, and, well, maybe not Turkey, but certainly Syria, Russia, and Iran would happily see the US withdraw from Syria. Okay. I guess that's it.
There's nothing more to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about, like, okay, so actually that was the question which I thought of before we started, which was, so, you know, occasionally you see stuff sort of floating around in the circles we mix in, which sort of talk about how good Donald Trump is on war. Is this evidence that Donald Trump is good on war?
I think it's evidence that he's good on announcements. In terms of on war, I don't, like, I know this is probably going to piss people off. It doesn't look like he's any different from any other president.
Okay.
I haven't seen a drastic shift on foreign policy. I really haven't. And if you are one of those people that goes like, oh yeah, Trump is like changing, he's fighting against the deep state on this, I'd just be like, on what exactly? I mean, Syria's unpalatable with the American public anyway. It's hard to make the case to the American people to go, hey, we need a surge in Syria, just like what we had in Iraq.
Yep.
You can't really make that case in the public.
No, and well, actually, that's what's saying Obama's attempts to intervene back in, I don't know, 2015 or 2014 or whatever it was, where essentially, the UK Parliament had a vote on intervening in Syria. It got hammered. It was looking.
We had a vote.
Yeah, we had a vote as well. And I think they didn't pass it here as well, or something happened with it.
No, it just got dropped.
Yeah.
It was they didn't actually vote on it, but
yeah,
it was during Tony Abbott's time. There just wasn't the votes in it.
Yep.
He didn't want to go further.
And Congress was a bit on the borderline. You know, like didn't seem to be the votes for it. So Obama essentially didn't do anything about Syria, which I think we would agree is a good idea. So,
so he's not deviating too far in this, except he did actually send troops to Syria.
Yep.
So, I mean, he did actually send them, and now he's pulling them back. So, I mean, I guess he's kind of like in essence, he's kind of where Bill Clinton wanted to be in 1992. The idea that something comes up in the media, you do a quick action, and you get the fuck out.
Yep.
Right? Which is what they wanted to do with Kosovo, which is what they wanted to do with, with a whole bunch with Bosnia, and Kosovo. That's what they wanted to do. Ended up being an entrenched engagement, and it led to the 2000 election basically being Al Gore being the guy who the war candidate, as you can imagine. You can't imagine that now, but
no.
Al Gore was the guy who was justifying Kosovo, and you had George Bush saying, "I'm not into nation building."
Yep.
Right now, kids today are like, wait, what? George Bush was the peace candidate?
Yep.
Yeah, in 2000, George Bush was the peace candidate, believe it or not.
Also surprisingly good on immigration as well.
Yeah,
which you couldn't believe the Republicans now. But yeah, he was actually, I think he made arguably a pretty substantial effort to try and get comprehensive immigration reform passed, but he just got caned by his own party.
Yeah, he did. That's actually something people should know, is that both McCain and George W. Bush and George Herbert Walker Bush and
Reagan
and Reagan really are the end of that old Republican Guard. And believe it or not, but that Republican Guard saw immigration as a way to tackle the Democratic influence, the Democratic Union influence in the country.
The great footage of H.W. Bush and Reagan arguing over who was better on immigration, as in for letting more people in. And
Yeah,
that was actually which is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So it's actually true. The strategy was to basically drown out Democratic Union votes with people who would be disenfranchised by the union movement.
yeah,
Unfortunately, it didn't work that way because while they deregulated the unions, they regulated immigration quite crazily. But anyway, so just this is just a history thing. 30 years ago, Republicans were pro-immigration. Actually, 10 years ago, Republicans were pro-immigration. It's real. What you're seeing now is the second shift, I guess you could say. There was the first shift was what was called the Southern strategy, where the Republicans really went all in on the South, and the Democrats went from being the party of the racist to the party of the urban middle class.
Yep.
And urban plutocrats.
Yep.
So that's where the Democrats are at now.
Yeah.
But it looks like the Republicans are switching sides completely.
Anyway, we got sidetracked. To go back to war. Yeah. So my thought is that this is a good step. I don't know if you get credit for fighting in 8 wars and not starting another one. So that was what I saw this week before this thing with Syria came along, which was, Trump hasn't started any more new wars. Well, okay.
Well, he started one.
Well, not really. I mean, Obama wouldn't. You mean getting involved in Syria?
Yeah.
I mean,
Obama wanted to, but the Syria conflict, I was pretty sure, started during Trump.
No, well, the civil war's been going since 2012. So, but U.S. involvement, I think there might have been people on the ground in Syria before that. Obviously, not to the same extent, but yeah. So yeah, like I don't think there's all much credit to be had for not starting more wars when you're already involved in so many, and you're involved in ones that you could end immediately overnight. So what's going on in Yemen is only possible because of the US war machine, and if they
I was right. No, I was right. It was just CIA in 2014.
Okay.
The US committed 400 troops to support stuff. Right. That was in Jordan. Right. And as far as I can tell, U.S. forces moved in. And so it's all over the shop. So the U.S. has been in Jordan the entire time.
Sure.
But then but then they moved in with actual forces in March 2017. I knew it.
Yeah, so Trump is ending the war that he started.
Yep. Yeah, so Marines were deployed on March 2017. There you go. I was pretty sure it was just a CIA effort.
Yep.
Until Trump got in.
Well, there you go. So he doesn't even get credit for ending a war that was already going on. He gets credit for ending a war that he started. Well, an involvement in war that he started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's why I was always skeptical about the Syria thing. Look, to be perfectly honest, like I said, I think Trump is in a place where Bill Clinton wanted to be. He responded to something that was going on in the media, and then when it became unpalatable, he said, "I'm getting the fuck out."
Yep.
Right. I'm pretty sure Bill Clinton would have loved to be able to do that in Kosovo. Unfortunately, It didn't work out that way. Anyway, next topic.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the Labor's plan to make housing cheaper, but of course it won't work because government.
I found this hilarious when I first read it.
So the policy announced at the Labor's National Conference, which was over I think last weekend. They announced so basically $6.6 billion of offering 15-year subsidies of $8,500 a year to investors who build new homes with taxpayer support conditional on the dwellings being rented to eligible tenants at 20% below market rent.
Yep. Right. So this is what I found hilarious about this. So Labor is on the record for going against negative gearing. They've said they're going to scrap it. I don't think that's going to last very long.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it, right, this entire $6.6 billion, it's effectively giving what they think is the average subsidy amount for negative gearing back to investors, right? So from the figures I saw, they said they want to do it for up to 250,000 homes. That's about our national dwelling approval rate. So what Bill Shorten, and I do think of him as the Australian Donald Trump, but so Bill Shorten has effectively said that he wants to double the Australian housing dwelling rate, right? So he wants to double the amount that is built every year. So he wants to build a house. So he wants to build as many homes as we do in a year. So he wants to effectively double it. But maybe for 1 year. I don't know exactly how much they want to ramp it up over the 15 years or whatever it is. They haven't released those figures. But the point is, what they've done is they've calculated the average amount of subsidy to investors, and they've gone, we will give you that money back if you buy this stuff. Now, I think what they're going to find is hardly anyone's going to take up this offer, right? Firstly, because I think state and local governments still have the control on dwelling approvals, right? And I don't think they're going to increase the approval rate to really account for this. And I think people picking up the properties are just going to go like, I could get an $8,000 subsidy a year, or I could try and make a profit out of it, right? And not bother with this negative gearing bullshit. Because when you get down to it, negative gearing is a subsidy to renters.
Yep. Yes. I mean, I think like in some ways you could say this is almost the theme of the podcast, is okay, this is a nice thing, but could this be done through market forces? Which the answer is absolutely yes. It's the reason that house prices are so high, and or just the cost of housing in general is so high, is because of the restrictions that the government puts in place to build more homes. So you don't need a subsidy program if you just made it easy for people to buy a house. Like, there's no shortage of workers, there's no shortage of materials, there's no shortage of land. It's just, really hard to build a house. Well, not, it's harder than it should be. So, I guess, the devil's always in the details as well. Like, you can get serious market distortions. As you see with, so the best example is rent in New York, like rent control. This is obviously not quite rent control, but it's sort of edging towards it, of subsidizing lower cost rentals, which, mucks around with supply and demand. So,
okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yep. Look, to be perfectly honest, I honestly, what I think is going to end up happening is, so, honest to God, this is what's going to end up happening. They'll get rid of negative gearing like they did in 1990, right? They'll try and weather the storm, right? Because they're gonna come in with like a 20 seat lead, right? They'll weather the storm longer than the 6 months that they weathered the storm back in 1990. But as soon as those rents keep climbing and climbing and climbing, and they realize every one of their economic advisors was fucking totally wrong,
yep,
right? They'll end up scrapping that policy.
Yep.
Right? And I think they'll take the hit. They'll take a huge hit in the polls. And I think that policy is what will ultimately turn Bill Shorten into a one-term prime minister. He's going to be the first one-term prime minister we'll have.
Okay, yeah, no, it's probably... Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it'll be hubris. Loads of people are warning them, like particularly, like economists who aren't from the Australia Institute are telling them, like, you tried this in 1990, right? And rents went up. And here's the thing, right? Every single person from the Australia Institute I've heard said, oh, no, that's just the data that indicated that was just from Sydney and Melbourne. The rest of the country didn't experience a drastic rise in rates. And I'm sitting there and going like, there's 15 seats in marginal electorates.
Yeah.
In Sydney and Melbourne.
An awful lot of people live in Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah. By all means, go for it. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that you will pretty much throw Labor out in one term, which is one hell of a achievement.
Yeah.
I think they'll go for it, and I think this policy will never see the light of day, because what will happen is, like, the rents will just keep going up. The first thing they're going to do is try and introduce rent control, which they can't at a federal level. So they'll bitch about it to the states, right? And that anytime there's a federal and state fight, everybody's general position is, you're the feds, fix it.
Yeah, well, yes, it's an unfortunate state of affairs when that happens. All right, is there any final thoughts on that one? You can just...
No, I honestly hope he goes for it. I cannot think of anything that would turn Bill Shorten into a one-term prime minister than if he goes for this policy. Then if he goes for the policy of getting rid of negative gearing.
All right, well, let's move on to our third topic, which is that the levy paid by Sydney-siders on all ride-sharing services such as Uber and whatnot has collected more than $34 million in its first 6 months, according to an article from yesterday in the Sydney Morning Herald. So this is basically, it's a levy. It's supposed to be compensating taxi drivers.
For taxi license plate.
Sorry, taxi plate owners, sorry.
For the licenses that they paid. And they're meant to get something like, if I recall correctly, something like $20,000 each. And I remember the sum total of the figure that they were due was something like $20-something million. This thing was like $22 or $23 million or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, as you can see, the taxes generated more than that.
Yeah. Well, that's and I mean, it's leaving aside that's probably the case because government bureaucracy is incompetent at predicting things. It shows you the strength of the ride-sharing industry. I mean, that's ultimately.
Oh no! Can I make one point? The New South Wales government will not get rid of this levy.
Oh, of course not. Hell no.
No.
They'll pay out the taxi owners and then they'll just keep the money in future.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely...
Oh, no. Sorry. No, they've already said. Oh, okay. So it's meant to raise $250 million.
Oh, $250 million. Okay.
Okay, so I was wrong. I was wrong by an order of magnitude. Okay, so it hasn't made more. So it's got to make $34 million in 1 year. $34 million in the first 6 months, and it's got to go up to $250 million. But I'm willing to bet that they won't get rid of it.
Yep. Nothing's more permanent than temporary tax.
Yeah.
As Reagan said.
Yeah, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's because of the the Liberal government. I think it'll be the Labor government that keeps it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, governments... You're talking about a period of time in maybe...
Yeah. So 4 years.
6 years, yeah.
No. So there's an election next year.
Sure.
So I have a suspicion Labor will end up keeping it, and then it'll just be the case that it just stays.
Yeah. It's... Yeah, so what's going to happen, because that's how governments operate. Is there... How do I put this? I mean, there's no real case for this. I mean, yeah, I don't sort of see the reason why this should even be a thing in the first place. But I guess that's libertarians. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just responding to people. But yeah, sure. I guess that's really it. I mean, we've had some pretty light topics for this week.
Yeah, I'm also really tired. I've only had 3 hours sleep because I have the flu and I couldn't get to sleep last night. So I'm a bit under the weather. So this will be a short episode. But we'll have a mega episode we're going to record on Sunday, the 23rd. Yep, 23rd.
Yeah. And that'll be like our big Christmas and sort of catch up episode. Yeah. All the big news of the year, I guess.
So that will be a big one. So we'll save you some time in brain space by keeping this one short and loading up on that one. So thanks everybody for joining us. We will be back shortly before we go away for a bit of a break. So thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we'll see you again soon.
We do take a lot of breaks though. I mean, I was gone for a month.
Yeah, I was gone for a week too. All right, bye.